Why is digital marketing so important to get the prime time slot here at the DLD? It's a 15 years old industry, and it's today one of the dominant industries, most dominant industries in the world. So Zenith has forecasted that in this year, the online advertising spendings will be first time above $100 billion. That means it will be first time above daily newspaper advertising revenues and only behind the media channel TV, just in 15 years. That is the good information. The bad information is that the digital marketing industry is a very fragmented industry. So we have, besides the big four, we have thousands of players who are trying to handle the business between the publisher on the one side and the marketer on the other side. And so what we are trying to do in the panel is to look what's next in digital marketing. So we are not focusing on the situation today. We are looking what's next. And I'm happy to have the panel here. I'm calling Michael Rubenstein from AppNexus first. Stephanie Hospital from Orange. So Mark Reed from WPP. And of course, we miss someone, Pascal Goutier from Criteo, but he's in the plan and he's right to land in Munich. But the good information is we have Robert Lang. He jumped in. He's also from Criteo, and I'm happy to have you here. And we have Florian Heinemann from Project A Ventures. So this is the panel. So let me introduce very quickly the panelists. Stephanie first. Stephanie is responsible for all digital businesses at Orange. That means on the one hand the audience business, of course, and on the other hand means the ad sales business by the acquisitions Orange was doing, like Unanimous, and some other ad sales activities around the world. It's Michael Rubenstein. He is responsible for the international business of AppNexus and for the business development and marketing and sales. And what is interesting about Michael, he was the founder of the DoubleClick exchange. And I do remember 7 years ago, as I was visiting him in New York, he was talking about a secret project, and that's now the exchange. Left to Stephanie is Mark. Mark Reed is, on the one hand, in the management board responsible for the strategy of WPP, the biggest agency holding in the world. And on the other hand, he is the CEO of WPP Digital. So, and Robert is responsible at Criteo for the international marketing activities, especially in Middle East and Africa. Is that correct?
Yeah, almost, and a couple of other places, so Latin America, Scandinavia, Eastern Europe. So everything but the place I live in Germany.
Okay. And thanks for being here and jumping in the slot of Pascal. And finally, we have Florian. He is the co-founder of Project A. This is a venture company started last year in Berlin. And before that, he was in the management and the co-founder of Rocket Internet, the Zamba incubator, and he was one of the biggest marketing spender in Europe, for example, for Zalando. So he will represent the marketeer perspective also. So my first question will be an important one about the data issue, big data, So I would like to ask you, Florian. We are talking about a war of data and fighting for data. Who, from your perspective, is the best owner for data?
I think if you look at how Google evolved, like Google AdWords, I think the key there was you had the data point of the search query, and everybody could access the search query data point at the same conditions. And I think that's what you need here as well. So that means basically you need data to be stored in a place. I mean, it doesn't really matter who that is, but the thing is that's important. The person or the institution has to be 100% neutral and has to allow access to the data points at equal conditions to as many people as possible. Why? Because only then a lot of people will apply their intelligence to the data points available and will find out the best applications possible and will generate most revenue out of the data. Because if you look at the development of Google AdWords, I mean, that started like 10 years ago, right? So, and now millions of advertisers worldwide are using it. And I think if you foresee the same development, that could also happen with the data now available for display advertising if this data points, I mean, that and to make that 100% clear, that can be totally anonymized, right? It doesn't matter if it's Christoph Schuh, just certain data points about you that are relevant to an advertiser, and if you make them available as freely as possible, only then the whole ecosystem will emerge. And I think that's one of the big problems that we see right now, that due to the data not being freely available, but being stored in silos, and only very few people, not in the US, but I mean, if you look at Europe, only very few people have access to this data, and that what makes it very, very hard to make this whole data-driven display ecosystem to evolve in the way it could.
And so that means an independent third party should hold the data. So Mark, does that fit to your strategy? Because I can read on your website that you are one of the biggest data points in the world. You are distributing about billions of ads per day. So does that, the perspective of Florian fit to your strategy?
Well, I think every company should own its own data. I mean, I think that's the focus. There's no right or wrong point. So from a WPP perspective, we're trying to own, the data that we have. Now you have to own it with the consumer's consent, right? So, and that may mean that you have to give them a copy of it, or they can look at it, or whatever else. But you should focus on that. I have to say, the biggest data owners are, in reality, from Terry's chart before, Google, Apple, Amazon, and they're the people that are really sort of hoovering up all of the data. The other point to make is it's not really about ownership, it's about operationalization, i.e. you could own all the data you have, but if you can't connect it to the point at which you make a decision, it's useless. And if you look at most traditional companies, or even many digital companies, they haven't yet approached Google's, the simplicity of having a Gmail account with all the data tied around it is amazing. I search for something online, I pick up my phone, and the search queries on my phone 10 seconds later, if you open the search box. So, that level of sophistication is where we would like to take WPP. So we're focusing on the sort of foundational data layer, and then we own it with our clients. So we help our clients apply their data to the media decisions, a bit like Criteo does in the same way.
Robert, what's your perspective on who's the best owner of data?
Well, ultimately, as Mark said, all the companies that are active online, it's their own destiny. So a lot of the data that is used in order to generate business and actual decisions, it's within each and every company. But I do agree with Florian that there's a couple of, let's say, more neutral hosts that will actually help to operationalize a lot of data, because we all know this myth of big data, but when it comes to actually processing the data, find out which data points are relevant and which ones are not for a single advertiser, and then in the end, which data points then can actually be used for a real-time decision, like what is the bidding price for this ad on that very publisher at that very moment for the user. Then a lot of advertisers will definitely benefit from people who do all that work for them, so that they don't have to do it themselves. But in the end, I mean, you know, digging in your data and owning your data and owning your processes, that is something that is core to every single business, whether it's online or offline. So in the end, guys, get at it.
Esther sent up a big sign saying the users. I think I did say, not just one person can own a piece of data, right? I can own something and someone else can own something. It's not like a car. So I think we can own the data that we have, and the users obviously own their data, and we use it with their permission, okay? To be clear.
Okay, that was important, thanks. So, Stephanie, I would like to ask you about, we don't want to go too much into details about law, cookie law and so on. So what is your expectation from the law perspective in the next years? Will the cookie be dead? What will we do without cookie? What do you need for your audience and ad sales business in your countries you are responsible for?
So our expectation is to be treated like everybody in the world. So I'm very proud of being European, and I want that a lot of advertising, internet business could grow in Europe. And if we look today at the various legislation on what we have cooking, I mean, it's clearly that a lot of the European players will have some difficulties to operate, as they might have some restriction that pure internet US player or Chinese will not have. So my claim is that equality for everybody in Europe, so as to be able to grow this digital industry with strong European successes.
So you're talking about the level playing field discussion. Vivian Redding was dropping out here last year.
Yes, all the discussion on the cookies and the regulation that might affect European-based players, especially here in Germany, but also in France and UK. So clearly, I mean, it's what is really important if we want, and I guess that a lot of us being in Munich are very happy to have this European business growing. We need to have something that is equal for everybody, and not only my American counterparts would be able to make the use of those data.
Thank you.
And I think what we shouldn't forget, I mean, the whole infrastructure, the whole ecosystem is based on cookies, right? So if you want to change that, I mean, there's not even a clue how one could operate on even close to equal terms without that, right? So, I mean, if you don't want a European advertising industry that, or even, I mean, it's not only advertising, right? I mean, it's the Zalandos of this world, everybody's operating on this. So, and it's not very hard to exchange it just with another standard. I think one can discuss what's personal information, what's anonymized information, all these kind of things. But it's, I think there's no clear alternative right now. And yeah, I think that has to be clear to everybody deciding in Brussels or wherever. Just being very strict on something without having a proper alternative doesn't help anybody.
Okay, so we hope that Brussels is listening to our panel. So let me switch to you, Michael, to the RTB, the real-time bidding. So you are standing for with AppNexus. What do you think? Let's go to the year, for example, 2015. How will real-time bidding change, let's say, the digital advertising world? What do you expect? What kind of ecosystem do you expect in 2015 when real-time bidding is fully integrated into all the systems?
Well, I think all of the problems in digital advertising will go away.
Yeah, sounds good.
No, I think the digital advertising world and ecosystem is constantly becoming more complex, probably, not less complex. Real-time bidding is an important new mechanism for buying and selling digital media. Effectively creates an online auction for every single impression, which allows advertisers to buy impressions on a very granular basis and use their data to do so, and allows publishers to create a giant global auction for every single impression. And I think at this point, the track record is clear. Year over year, 100% or more growth in this area. So much so that by 2015, I expect real-time bidding in and of itself will be a larger market than all of display advertising was just a couple years ago. And so it will be an important component, I think, of digital advertising. But it won't be the only part. I think the significance to me of real-time bidding, the larger significance, is that it's the application of new technology to allow buyers and sellers of media to do business with each other in new and different ways than they've ever done so before. And I actually think that the ways that buyers and sellers do business with one another online, advertisers and publishers, is going to continue to evolve. I think 2 years from now, 2015, we'll be sitting here. Real-time bidding will be a huge market, but we'll be talking about new and different technologies and their application to buying and selling premium advertising online, buying and selling mobile advertising, video advertising, and other things. I think it's just the start of an exciting new phase in the application of technology to media buying and selling.
And do you expect that premium publishers will be part of the real-time bidding world in 2015, or will they have their own private exchanges and not being part of the, let's say, big real-time bidding platforms at all?
Well, I think we're already seeing premium publishers and brands moving out into the mainstream and capitalizing on new technology. I think Stephanie and Orange is a fantastic example of that. And I think that when any new technology enters a market, it can be adopted by early adopters in the market, which in the case of real-time bidding was not the premium publishers. But increasingly, we're seeing that that is the trend. In Europe alone, for example, today, we provide technology to companies like Microsoft, Deutsche Telekom, Schibsted, Orange, and others who are typically thought of as very premium publishers who are today embracing new technologies because they see exciting new opportunities they can capitalize on. And truth be told, it's also how advertisers and agencies want to buy these days.
Mark, if I may ask you, what is your opinion about RTB in 2015? Will that be something where agencies have to explain to customers why they are necessary if everyone can buy in a system the whole inventory? So what is the role of the agency if real-time bidding is the place to be in 2015?
I mean, I think that, yes, real-time bidding will grow, but I think we kind of, we have to differentiate between real-time bidding, which is an auction, and automated methods of trading. And so I think there'll be a significant growth in automated methods of trading. The current system of faxing IOs should go away. We should be able to collect the data on our campaigns, not just real-time campaigns, but premium campaigns. And I think it is a mistake for premium publishers to put their inventory, too much of their inventory, into these exchanges, because it just commoditizes it. And there's no doubt that audience-based buying from agencies is a threat to premium publishers. If we can target our consumers on your site better than you can, then why should you pay a premium? There's another practical problem with real-time bidding, which is, I think, the drive to improve the quality of display advertising. Viewability is behind that. With let's say half of all impressions unsold, let's just pay for the ones people see and pay a proper price for the ones people see. You can't do that if you bid in an exchange, because you bid before you know whether someone viewed your impression. So there are some practical problems with it, but I think in general we would like to move to a more automated relationship with premium publishers, and some of the prices may be auction-based, but many of them will be agreed as part of an overall trading arrangement. And the goal, all of those intermediaries on Terry's chart are taking cuts of the margin. So if I was a publisher, I'd be trying to get as close as I could to an agency group, to cut out all those people who are taking our margin. And so, our strategy with Xaxis has been to, apply technology to the process of buying media, not just apply technology to the process of selling media, and try and bring the publisher and the consumer, or the publisher and the advertiser, as close together in as integrated fashion as possible.
And one more question about real-time bidding to Michael. So you were building up the DoubleClick ad exchange. Now you are the biggest competitor in a way. Do you think you can compete against the gorilla Google with your own technology? And what will be your way to convince publisher and agencies and clients to use your system? So can you give us 3 arguments why you are thinking you will be there in 2015?
Sure. Well, AppNexus, I mean, I think have established a really strong track record already. The company has grown very strongly, both back in the United States and here in Europe. And I think it's because we've developed great products that are about bringing new technologies, as I mentioned, to the buying and selling of digital advertising. We're the largest independent company that does that today. And, some of the panelists talked earlier about ownership of data and other complicated issues. I think our clients, appreciate the fact that as a neutral technology player, they own the data and they're doing business with a company who's solely and exclusively focused on building technology to make their businesses successful. I think that was one of the things that helped us at DoubleClick back in the day make us a successful business, and we're seeing great traction in the market today. I think there's room for multiple players, but we're very excited about our own traction, and certainly our results in Europe have been a big testament to that.
So Michael, we will invite you in 2015 and discuss where we are.
I will be here.
So Robert, one question about the buzzwords retargeting and dynamic creative targeting, which were building up the incredible success of Criteo, which is, by the way, I think one of just a few former startups in Europe who are worldwide successful right now. And what are you as Criteo team planning to have as new products in the future after winning in the retargeting and dynamic creative targeting field?
Yeah, so I know that there's always lots of buzzwords, and as usual, the reality is quite boring if you compare it to that. Because the principal business of Criteo is to put the right ad in front of the right person at the right time. Now, being one of the biggest buyers on RTB on a global level, you need to digest and apply in real time a lot of information, a lot of data in order to make that decision. I know that Esther has been saying that data belongs to the user, but there's a lot more data. Like for advertisers, for example, you can go seasonal, you can go after the weather, you can go after stock levels that come out of ERP levels. So there's just a plethora of potential data stream which you can inject into the decision-making engine, and that will actually then return ads that are more relevant for the user to see, and that will then give more money to the publisher who actually is giving the ad space to Criteo, who does some of the decision which one would be the most relevant ad at the very moment. And since we have a very clear measure of success because our clients only pay us if there's an engagement with the ad, so typically it's a click on the ad, that makes the task of actually putting it there, putting the right price, that makes it our risk and or our challenge. And so forth, we're just trying and parsing all available data streams, and I agree with Florian, there's a lack in Europe, there's more available in the States, but the data that at this very moment is relevant for a purchasing decision or for engaging with a brand or for engaging with an e-commerce advertiser. And the secret, let's say, behind retargeting is that this first-party data coming from the merchant itself, like the behavior that people have shown on the website, what kind of products did they look at, what kind of products did they buy, that is a very, very strong signal of intent. Other strong signals of intent are like search. Google is monetizing that quite nicely on a global level. And to try and find these triggers of intent that could potentially indicate that this very user at that very moment with that weather on that publisher is interested for a significant ad. And all the rest are technologies around, whether I buy it through the fax or through RTB, whether I have dynamic creative or static creative done by one of the best agencies of the world, that is actually a little less relevant.
Okay, so you are talking about currencies like the CPC, which is still the most important currency for digital advertising. Stephanie, I would like to ask you, I think the click is not the best currency to do brand advertising in the digital internet. So what do you think about new currencies like Google is doing with Active GRP and then some other currencies? Do you think that will help to develop more brand advertising against performance advertising? Do you think that will help?
Yes, clearly, we need to have a unified way of analyzing all the data from the offline and online world. I mean, it's clear that during many years, I mean, the TV has been working with this GAP model. And now there's clearly a need to reinvent that for the digital. But maybe we should be more trying to adapt the beauty of the digital where we have all the data and try to find something else than purely reinventing a kind of data GRP. So coming from the data, from the digital, and then trying to make it happen. I'm always so surprised to see that for many years this industry has been living with such an I would say artisanal or archaic way of counting the value and the efficiency of advertising. And when it comes to brands, I mean, clearly, I mean, often brands see a social network as a way of interacting and creating direct response with their brands, but as for us, we see it more as a long-term relationship and way of making the branding of your company. So, and this is where, when it comes to brand, it's always difficult to track the efficiency of the advertising that is flow.
Thank you. So, Florian, I know you did a lot of modeling and analyzing in the past and still right now to think about combining different channels, offline channels like TV and different online channels. So first question, how important is the currency discussion for you as a big spender? And second, what is your learning about modeling and multi-channel? So what is the best way to do digital advertising in combination with classical media?
I think what's 100% clear, there is like some kind of effect if you do TV advertising, or also if you do branding advertising on the other performance channels. So I think that is a fact, right? So just using the click or just using some kind of CPO would definitely underestimate the true effect of display advertising in whatever channel is out there. So I mean, that's 100% clear. The problem is, I mean, within digital, you have right now a common currency or a common denominator, which is basically the cookie that you can use, and you can track how often the user comes to your website, what kind of creative he has seen, and then do some kind of statistical attribution modeling based on individual users, right? And there's a lot of tools that evolved there, especially in the US, that are getting more and more sophisticated and closer to reality. We have done quite a lot in that, and we have found huge effects of, for example, display advertising on all the other channels. So that's why we've been able, unlike a lot of other performance advertisers, to do quite significant display spendings because I think we're able to understand a little better how the effect worked. The problem comes when you have TV, right, or when you have some kind of offline activity, because it cannot be measured on the same denominator. You don't have the cookie underlying, and that's where the problem arises. And I think the only solution that you see right now is something that Google, for example, engages in by doing cross-channel panels where they have users where they track the TV behavior of users, the media consumption offline, online, and then try to understand the cross effects, like in a panel type setting. And I don't see any other way to do this, and but to better understand the cross effects that you see, right? So, and I think Google is engaging in that activity in Germany and in France. But again, the question there is probably neutrality. I mean, Google has quite a strong interest in this. But if I were a publisher or if I were a TV station, I would definitely engage in a lot more research in how this stuff interacts. And I think that's where a lot of publishers fall short, and also a lot of TV stations fall short. Supporting the advertiser in understanding the cross effects, because right now you're given TV inventory or you're given print inventory, but you're not helping the advertiser to understand the cross effects. And every advertiser has to do that stuff by himself, or he works with an agency like yours. I mean, you probably also help them, right? But there's a lot of advertisers out there that don't have a clue of these cross effects, and I think would be very cool positioning for publishers, where they can definitely create a lot of value and also justify the high CPMs that they charge for their media, because if you just take the CPC, if you just take a CPO, that's definitely underestimating the value. Because if you look at what's branding essentially, right? I mean, branding essentially sometime in the future will translate into turnover, ideally. The only problem is you don't know how long it takes until it translates into turnover, and you don't know how strong the effect is, right? So understanding these two effects, like the time lag and the strength of the effect, that's like one of the key things that a publisher or a TV station, they have to understand and have to justify. And I'm always wondering why this is not happening, because I mean, this is not a new question or a new phenomenon, right? I mean, you're sitting there as an advertiser and have to do this modeling yourself. I mean, a Rocket Internet or we at Project A or Zalando, we could do that because we like bundle a lot of know-how and quite some resources. But for a normal advertiser, they lack the resources, they lack know-how. So that would be definitely something that would be very valuable.
Mark, if I may ask you, as the biggest agency group, so what is your perspective, let's say in 2 years, what can you offer to clients to help to understand multi-channel advertising, not just only in the digital category, but also in the offline world? Is there, you're working on something? Because as in my learning, in our groups, the e-commerce companies trying to find out a link between offline advertising and online, and you must be in the position to build up something to fix the problem.
Well, I mean, I think there's a sort of natural segmentation because offline is much harder to measure than online, and it's hard to tie the two things together. So I just think there's some practical problems that, we're working on panels and we're working with some of the people we talked about on some of those panels. But it's a hard thing to do. That's all I.
Is there offline advertising 2 years from now?
Once again.
Is there what?
Is there offline advertising 2 years from now?
Well, I mean, that's an interesting question, right? So if you look at our projections, free-to-air TV is going to grow as a percentage of advertising globally in the next 2 years, right? So, I mean, you come to these digital conferences and people say, oh, TV is going away. It's like, it's not, right? It's going to grow. So I think it's a TV and digital world. And TV might not be measurable, to this like analytic level that you can do clicks and auctions, but it's extremely effective. Hence in the UK, ITV share price has doubled in the last 6 months. Hence the same thing I'm sure you're seeing in Germany. So I think we live in, we delude ourselves if we don't think that TV is going to be there, and you cannot necessarily scientifically measure these things. If the day you see your first ad from Mercedes is the day you buy your first Mercedes, we probably haven't done a very good job of communicating to our clients. So there's a level of lack of specificity and lack of targeting that's needed in advertising or brand advertising. So I think you see the offline world as a brand building world and the internet as more of a direct marketing world, and maybe that is just the separation, and there's other things that happen online that are interesting.
So what's your perspective, Robert?
Yeah, it actually ties into the last question that we have, that you asked me, what are the next big things? So one is clearly the discipline of being able to digest offline information. So one thing that's very important is like offline transaction information. So I show you a display ad with a very nice shirt, and then you go to a shop and buy it. How to actually be able to enter this information into an online, into the online tool and the online marketing, and to be able to account for the fact that you actually did buy the shirt, because it's for nobody, it's relevant if I show you a shirt again and again, because I think you're still in the market for it, but you actually already bought it. That's trying to take that effect out of the market. That is one discipline. And the other discipline is indeed to scientifically measure the uplift that various measures are giving. So we did also measures like, how does that impact, how does our display, although we only charge you for the click, how does it positively affect your search results? How does it positively affect your brand awareness, etc.? The challenge with that is it's always going to be punctual, so it's very hard to make that part of a real-time decision algorithm, but you can give guidance to the advertiser, as in like, the uplift on your search was X%, or the uplift on your long-term branding was Y%. Now the question, how much is that worth to the advertiser? I think it very much also depends on the advertiser, what they use the channel for. Is it, a fast-moving consumer goods brand that wants to, create brand and demand so people buy the stuff in the shop? Then this is more tricky, more difficult. It lies in the eye of the beholder. If it's an online shop who just wants to do the transaction very quickly and clearly measurable, then it's much easier to do that, direct link and the direct relationship.
Stefanie?
I think that during this panel we speak a lot about data. I mean, it's normal, it's digital marketing, but then we need maybe to come back to the essence of our activity. I mean, there's a lot of data, it's great, it's perfect. The point is that it's useless to have data if you don't know what you're searching for. I mean, so at the end of the day, it's a question of decision, and I can see maybe a lot of marketers being a bit skeptical or not knowing how to use all that data. And the first point, it's about emotion. I mean, we're human. I mean, when we buy a product, it's because we want it, because we dream of it. And I think that beyond all those data information, we need to come back to the essence of our activity, that is to say, creating the right experience so that user be able to have the willingness to buy a given product. And what is complicated now for marketers and for communication, for advertiser, is that it's no more the rules of the 4P, where it was quite simple. You think about a product, its price, its plan, its promotion. And now it's more rather a global experience where you need to be able to have this unique experience everywhere, to engage with user and to create a kind of evangelism about this experience. And this is why data is useful, but it's also about emotion.
Okay, thanks. So I would like to come to mobile. I think we can't do a panel about what's next in digital advertising without talking about mobile. And after the mobile, you are asked to ask your questions if you have some. So I would like to ask with you, Michael, about mobile. So you are building up one of the biggest technology infrastructures for digital advertising beside Google. And what is your plan to integrate mobile in your ecosystem? And what do you expect mobile to be in 2015?
Well, we have, I think, probably like everyone in this room, plans to make big investments in mobile because consumer behavior is shifting all media consumption, or a huge percentage of it, over to mobile devices. And so our business, like many others, will be, hugely invested in that. And the independent research on the subject is clear. The advertising industry shift of dollars over to mobile is strong. It's a very small but still very fast-growing segment of the market. One of the big issues as it relates to people here, though, I would imagine, is the relative scarcity of data for targeting available in mobile environments. And I think that's going to be one of the interesting topics over the next several years. We talked in the beginning about regulatory environment as it relates to data. Advertising is the lifeblood of the free internet. And for the most part, consumers are comfortable with that value trade. And I think that as the mobile media consumption environment evolves, it's either that value trade is going to have to we're going to have to find a way to make that work in the mobile environment, or there's going to have to be some other balance or some other mechanism struck in mobile. Because I think advertisers, and I don't want to speak, maybe I would also ask, Mark or the gentleman from Criteo, but I think advertisers really want and need the ability to, run targeted advertising in order to make it work most effectively. And I think that's going to be one of the key topics that we are going to be working with people to address is what's the right value trade relative to data? And for publishers too, what's the right way for them to continue to monetize content that was being monetized at a high CPM offline in traditional media, then at a lower CPM in online media, and today even a lower CPM in mobile media. What does that mean?
I think that's exactly the problem. What we find out that the eCPM in mobile is, let's say, on a level of 20% of the eCPM in the internet. So, Mark, one very short answer to the question: how should we solve the problem that usage is shifting into mobile, but the eCPM levels, so these CPMs, we can achieve are much lower? When do you see closing the gap, or do you have a solution for that problem?
I don't really have a solution. I mean, I think mobile is both extremely exciting and extremely frightening. And Jeff Zucker said about the internet that it turns analog dollars into digital pennies, and I think there's a danger that the mobile is going to turn digital pennies into, I don't know, mobile, if I can say, apologies to the drachma. I mean, it's going to devalue the currency, by one whole, by another order of magnitude, and will be very destructive to publishers that have generated revenue, on the traditional internet. Now, 20% of all e-commerce is going through mobile for, companies that do a good job. So that will increase, and that will drive the CPM up. According to Google, 2/3 of companies don't have a mobile-optimized website, which is incredible when you think how much commerce is going through it. So presumably 100% will have one soon, and we're available to build them for all of our clients and non-clients. So presumably that will drive the CPM up. So there are things that will happen, but ultimately the mobile is going to be fantastic for lots of things, fantastic for building relationships with consumers, for multi-channel commerce. You go to a cafe at lunchtime, people don't read newspapers anymore, unfortunately. They're all on their mobile devices. But it might just not be a great advertising medium. And that's life, right? Nothing we can do about it.
So, thanks. So we are open for, let's say, 2 to 3 questions. You want to start?
Keith Tier from just.me. I wrote an article recently for TechCrunch called Unnatural Acts, which was all about mobile advertising. And I specifically focused on targeting and the inappropriateness of that concept to a very intimate device, that consumers probably won't welcome being targeted on mobile. It's a little bit like being targeted in your home, and you get direct mail that you don't want and it doesn't feel good. And I put forward a different way of thinking, which is direct mail, that is welcome because you want it. More of a relationship between an advertiser and a consumer.
But so Thomas Felger from Icon Mobile is here. And Thomas, to my mind, has the best mobile campaign. They did a campaign for BMW in Germany, and apparently here when it snows you have to have snow tires. So they looked at the weather forecast and said, it's going to snow in Munich tomorrow, so come to your garage and you get €20 off having your snow tires fitted tomorrow or today. Right, so it's personalized, they know you have a BMW. It's event-driven, they know it's going to snow tomorrow. It's location-based, it's going to snow in Munich but not in Bonn. And the response was terrific. So I think that you can do that, but you have to do it intelligently. You can't do it unintelligently.
So one more final question.
The way to do it intelligently is to welcome them rather than to target them. When you welcome someone in a store, you say, hello, Mrs. Dyson, we see you bought a red skirt, would you like red shoes? When you target them, you say, hello, middle-aged white lady, and you put them in a bucket. So you need their permission one way or another, and I think companies like WPP should actually turn around and start representing the users rather than representing the targeters. You were supposed to answer that, Mark.
Well, Esther's on our board, so we'll have plenty of chance to discuss it at a later date, and we do discuss it. I mean, I wish there was another word than target, but it's the word that always sort of slips out, and it's like track. So we need to have a better language for what we're doing, but the best advertisements have always been things that consumers enjoyed, for things that they're interested in. It's why great products drive great advertising, drive great brands. It's as simple as that.
Consider it as an invitation to come and go to the shop instead of being targeted. Maybe that's...
No, but being, anyway, say something about being sort of chased by ads, around the internet is not a great experience from a consumer's perspective. And that, I think, is the sort of thing we have to guard against.
So I'm sorry, but we are running out of time. So I have one final question to you all. Just answer in one word. So what do you think will be mobile usage versus internet usage in 2015?
I would assume that mobile usage will probably be half. Oh, one word, half.
Yeah, the question is whether you count tablets into that. If you count tablets into that, it's going to be half or even more.
Yeah, more than half.
Clearly more than an half.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Thanks for the fantastic panel. Thanks a lot.